bring to it.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. I don't know much about him except that he seems like a fabulous man. So
yeah, and each time. Awesome. Thank you all for being here. Hello, I am Sherry Reichert-Ballou, and my book is Say It Now, 33 Creative Ways to Say I Love You to the Most Important People in Your Life. And I'm so excited today. We have Kelvin in the magnificent hat I'm putting over here because that's where you're on my screen. And Yaddyra, who is also here with her beautiful hair we were just talking about before you all came on. And these are our two guest authors, and welcome to those of you who are also joining us. Rachel and MJ are also authors with us. And Robin, what is your title at Mango?
Editorial coordinator, which is just a fancy way of saying copy editing, reviewing, design help kind of person.
Everything.
all on track.
You know how to do everything. Awesome. Well, welcome, welcome. So we'll start off today, and Yaddyra, why don't we start with you and have you hold up your book for us. I think, maybe you don't have your actual book with you.
I actually don't, because I didn't make it into the office. I do have a copy of the cover if I can screen share.
Sure, yeah. And then while or maybe right after you do that, first we'll have you do that, and then we'll have you share just a little bit about how you're taking care of yourself right now. Ooh, I love the dots.
Cool.
Look, don't you love that the dots are matching Kelvin's hat?
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it.
So beautiful.
And so my co-author, Alina Diaz, she designed.
Oh, okay. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, so Yaddyra, do you want to share with us just whatever at the moment you're using to help yourself with self-care or finding positivity or love or compassion right now in these challenging times we're in?
Well, aside from taking walks, which have actually fallen a little bit by the wayside because we've been getting torrential rains, and when it's not raining, it's very hot down here in South Florida. The main thing that I've been doing is that I'm part of a poetry postcard group that was started by a friend of mine out in California. So it's about 13 or 14 of us. And what we do is that we send a postcard to each person like every 2 or 3 days on the list. And so we send a postcard and write a poem on the other side. So I've been getting I think this is what I have so far for the last couple of weeks. And I've been getting really cool things like, I don't know if you can see this. This is an actual Florida postcard from the 1960s.
Wow.
And some of us are actually hand making our postcards. So this is a collage. And I bought a whole bunch of blank cards. So for me, I've been drawing on one side, or I'm sort of like an amateur or dilettante artist. Like I minored in visual arts when I was in college. So I've just been playing around with acrylics or watercolors and just kind of either making something colorful or coming up with a collage, and then I'll write a haiku on the other side.
That is fantastic. I love that. And so for you, you're writing your own poetry, your own haiku.
So I'm making my own postcard, and I try to make sure that whatever is the image on the postcard sort of complements the haiku or short poem that is going to go on the other side. And I know some of the people in the group, but there are some people that I've never actually met before. All I know is that they might live in a place called Forks of Salmon, California, or that they're somewhere in Canada. So I kind of try to imagine what kind of message they would like to be receiving.
That is absolutely wonderful. And I love that. I mean, this totally fits in, which we'll talk about a little bit more after Kelvin has a chance to introduce himself, but it fits into what we were just saying about, I was tossing out that for me, creativity is a huge path out of anxiety and depression. And I just love that that's one of your self-care tools, is this really creative outlet. And
it's a good way to kind of get out of your own head. pretty much, because you're kind of like, you're using other parts of your body, like to make something. I don't know how to explain it, but it just, you get out of your thoughts, which it's very hard to kind of fall into these days, especially if you're at home all the time. And there's constant terrible news. And you know, a lot of it that's important to know, but it's just kind of trying to balance things out. And it's really nice to kind of get out of that and get into another zone where you're trying to reach out to somebody else on a different level. Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking too, that it's like you get that whole experience, but then the people who are receiving, what I can only imagine what that must be like to receive a postcard that someone has handmade with their own poetry. Like what a gift of energy and light. So love that. Oh, thank you for sharing that. They're beautiful. How about you, Kelvin? Do you want to tell us about your book? And then for right now, we'll just start with how you are taking care of yourself during this time.
Yeah, of course. So here's my book. Yes, can you guys see? Yeah, all right, there we go. Notoriously Dapper. And the book is, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It's, the whole book is about how to be a modern gentleman with manner, style, and body confidence. So the book pretty much starts off with me in about like my middle school days. And then it goes on to when I had my first daughter and, you know, got my first after college job and all of that stuff. So it really goes in like a very deep about race, relations, body positivity, you know, basically, you know, hipping people to what the new term gentleman means. Because back in the day, you know, like a gentleman was just somebody that dressed nice and and was able to open up doors and all that stuff. And you could still be a gentleman and still be racist and still be homophobic and still like, you know, be technically like, you know, a anti-feminist. Like you could be all these things that would no longer be acceptable in this day and age. And people still viewed you as like a gentleman, you know? So it's really me like trying to redefine that word of gentleman and really, you know, put it out there, basically saying if you're like racist, if you're homophobic, if you're anti-feminism, then you really cannot call yourself a gentleman. Like it's no longer 1939, you know, we live in 2020. So you really got to be like pro women's rights. You got to be for everybody in order to consider yourself a gentleman.
That is so great. Oh, I love your message.
Thank you.
Yeah. And what about, so how have you personally been taking care of yourself during this challenging period of time?
I've been doing a lot of housework. So we actually painted our kitchen this youthful salmon color. It's like a pinkish color. And we painted this room, which was like, this room used to be green. It used to be like this light, ugly, like 1920s green. It was like hideous. So we painted it like, it's called Greek white. So it's like kind of like a Greek villa white. And we got a new bed for my youngest daughter. So we're like removing furniture. We got like this really cool bar cart. I don't know if you guys can see it. Do you guys see the bar cart?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Very
so
nice.
Yeah, so we're making some home renovations. I have been keeping busy doing some artwork because I used to be a middle school art teacher. I taught art for 7 years before doing this. Yeah. So I've been doing some artwork. I actually designed these shoes. Hold on, let me show you guys. Where are my shoes at? Hold on.
The show and tell aspect today.
Yes. Hold on.
This is
I'm
great.
going to
We
get
had
them.
Yaddyra sharing her screen, and now we've got Kelvin bringing us stuff.
So I like
you can say
took these
shoes.
Wow.
white shoes and I painted them.
What?
Cool stuff on there. Yeah.
They're beautiful.
Thank you.
Kelvin, that is awesome.
Yeah. So I've been like trying to keep busy by like customizing like different stuff that I have, like hats. I like customized like some hats that I had that were like just bland. I like painted some stuff on them. Yeah. So
Did you customize this one that you're wearing?
I did it. I had a friend named Travis that did it for me in Nashville. This is like one of the only ones that I've never customized, and it's my favorite hat. So.
I love this already. Debbie and I were saying before anybody else came on, like we were like, this is going to be such a fun panel because we have all this sort of like expression happening, and I think it's needed. Like, and I think to your point, you know, of the things that you're doing to your home, to make it feel, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like to me, it's like more like you or more expressive.
Of course. I mean, I never would have found time to do half of the stuff, like we would still be living in this ugly lime green, like living room, like we would still be, like there was no way I could have found time to do any of this. So as, hard as the COVID-19, like quarantine is, it's kind of nice to be able to, take care of stuff at your house and really spend a lot of family time and really focus on yourself,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I want to welcome Christopher. You weren't here when we were saying our hellos. Welcome. Good to see you. Awesome. So Yaddyra, let's go back to you and go back to your book and whatever you want to share with us, like whatever you feel is the messaging from your book that you just felt like is important right now for us to know.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about last panel, and we talked about resilience, and that's a conversation I also have been having with the author of another Mango book, which is the Book of Awesome Black Americans, and just that as a young activist that she's learning a lot from her elders about how much resilience it takes to hang in there if you'd like to affect any kind of change in the world. And so a lot of that for me sort of begins at home and begins with taking care of myself, which means taking the time out to do these things that nourish my soul, which, for me involves creativity. So if I can find it, I will maybe read, there's a little poem that I have at the very end of Anxious Art, which kind of speaks to that a little bit. And it's a poem called Sanctuary. And it's about finding sanctuary within yourself. Sanctuary. The world rushes in, colliding with my feelings like speeding cars in oncoming lanes. I want to be an animal, my eye made only to gently follow the simple changes in the air. Words spun from my fingertips fly through the air, gently enveloping me to make the kind of home a snail carries on her back.
Hey, would you read that one more time?
Sure. Sanctuary. The world rushes in, colliding with my feelings, like speeding cars in oncoming lanes. I want to be an animal, my eye made only to gently follow the simple changes in the air. Words spun from my fingertips fly through the air, gently enveloping me to make the kind of home a snail carries on her back.
Thank you. Do you want to share a little bit with us, like why that poem? What does it mean to you?
While I've always loved books, I've been very attached to books since before I could read. Like for some reason, even before I could read, I remember going into a store that had books and just begging to have books as objects, books with illustrations, and to be able to sort of have that experience with my parents and being able to read with them. And, when my family came from Honduras to Miami, I was 6 years old, and it took me a little while to learn the language, to learn English, and that slowed down my reading. I didn't read fluently in English until I was in the second grade, which was really hard. It was really hard to be the last in class or the worst in class. And so I was introduced to poetry through a first grade Spanish teacher who had us all do haiku in Spanish one day. And somehow I was really good at it because I like to look at things, because you really need to be able to look at things to be able to pick out the right details to go into haiku. And since I finished my work early every week, she would have me do haiku every single time. And she collected them and then started entering my poetry into contests. So for me, like that was like a great sense of achievement during a time in which I didn't feel like I was achieving much. And I was also trying to acclimate to a new culture and a new language. So like that's, even though I believe in art for art's sake, like I make art just because I love to do it, a byproduct for me is always that I get to kind of work something out and make a thing that didn't exist before. So
Wow.
that for me is just, it's like making art, making poetry, writing, that's kind of like my home. Like I carry that with me no matter what is happening to me or what's going on in the world. So I feel lucky to have that.
Oh, that's beautiful. And a couple of people have said, Robin and Rachel were both saying that, you know, how beautiful that was. And Robin said, I love that snail, right? Which is, that, you know, carrying that with you. That's so beautiful. Wow. Yeah, I love what you're saying about also that, you know, that came from such an early place in your life, and that it came from someone really recognizing that beautiful place in you. You know, that touched me so much that you saw that, you know. Yeah.
Thanks for letting me share. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And before we move back to Kelvin, I want to say hi. I see that Nita has joined us. Hello, Nita. Congratulations on your book birth this week.
Thank you. I think
Yeah.
Brenda's on here too.
Brenda
Brenda,
too.
congratulations.
Brenda,
Hello,
too.
thank you.
Yay.
Hey, Brenda.
Congratulations, both of you. Awesome. We're glad you're here. So, Kelvin, what about you? What kind of wisdom did you want to bring to us today, or what thoughts did you want to share?
Well, it's pretty relevant to what's going on in this day and age. I think it's how I wrote about it in chapter 2, I believe, but about race relations. In chapter 2, I wrote about, so there was a time where my car broke down. I was taking my wife and my kids to go to Five Guys to go grab some dinner, and we hit a pothole on the way, and my front passenger tire like ended up exploding, like becoming completely flat. So I pulled into like this neighborhood that was like a nearby neighborhood, and there was a guy that was mowing his grass, and he saw me struggling. Like I was visibly struggling trying to change his tire. Now, mind you, it's like in South Carolina, like in the dead heat of the summer, it's like 100 and God knows how many degrees. It was probably like 103 on that day. I don't know. It was like treacherous hot, you know? So both of my kids and my wife, you know, they're like standing out in the heat. They're watching me, you know, trying to change the tire into the spare. And this guy, he was an elderly white guy across the street, was mowing his grass. He came over and he asked me if I needed any help. And, you know, I'm not shy. I was like, yes, I do need help. Like, I am visibly struggling. I need some help, you know? So he offered to help me. He went in the shed and got all the tools and stuff. And his wife came out, and she brought my wife water, and she brought our girls juice boxes. And they had a son that came out, and the son came out, and he started playing with my oldest daughter. And it was like this moment where I realized, like, this guy that's probably like 63, I would say. And me being like just turned 30 at the time, there was like this moment that we shared, even though we grew up in different times. We're obviously both different races, and we obviously have both different life experiences, you know? It was a moment that I really cherished because it didn't matter what race we were. It didn't matter how old I was, how old he was. He was literally just trying to help somebody in need, and I was the person accepting that help. And it was a beautiful moment that I think shared with my daughter and his son, because they ended up going to school at the same time. So full circle, I ended up going to my daughter's school for career day, and that boy was in the class that was next door to her. And he goes, "You wrote about my dad like in your book," because whenever this book came out, I dropped them off a copy of it, and I highlighted like all the parts that I wrote.
Oh.
I wrote about him, and I was like, you know, just so you know, there's like a few excerpts about our interactions whenever you helped me change our tire, and he was very excited about it. But his son was like, "Wait, I remember you because my dad helped you change your tire," and it was like this moment of like full circleness for like my daughter and his son, like they're both in the same class, and you know, it's just like and it's almost just like a new generation that's like growing up, and it's just, oh no, it just everything went full circle for me, and it was just almost like you know, we're obviously way different ages, almost like 30 years apart, but our kids are the same age, you know, and they go to the same school. And I don't know, it was just like this very beautiful moment. And I ended up seeing them a couple of times around town, and come to find out, we actually went to the same high school at like different times, but we went to the same high school and everything. So it was just like really eerie how like that happened. Cause I mean, that rarely happens, you know, to like people where like you know, find a stranger that helps you in like your lives kind of, you know, cross paths like in different ways. You know, I'm really interested to see how the future goes. Like maybe, you know, like maybe if our kids graduate at the same time, we'll see each other at graduation, you know?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Or I thought you were going to say too, like maybe your kids will collaborate on something, or who knows,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
who knows?
Exactly, you know, yeah. So it was like this, I talk about that a lot whenever I'm talking about race relations, because I mentioned that, you know, if people would just forget that they are like, you know, looking at somebody of color, they're looking at somebody of non-color, they would just forget somebody's age. If all that stuff wouldn't matter, like if the media and if, you know, parents or, you know, people didn't teach that, you know, if we didn't teach the negativity of that, you know, like I think it's very important to not like to acknowledge people of color and to, you know, respect their culture and to do all those things, you know, like the people that are colorblind, like I don't see color, you know, that's like a different form of racism that I believe personally, you know. So I think it's really important for people to accept people for who they are, but don't let that affect the way that you treat them.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah, Calvin, this is so beautiful. And can you say a little bit more about your work as a gentleman and
Of course.
and how that plays into exactly what you're saying about how we can learn to be with one another?
Yeah, so the whole new term of the modern gentleman, like I was mentioning earlier, it means that like you cannot be homophobic, you cannot be racist, and you cannot be anti-feminism. You basically cannot be against a group of people for whatever reason and call yourself a gentleman, you know? We have, you know, a person right now that is in office that dresses up every single day, you know, and just because you wear a suit doesn't necessarily make you a gentleman, you know? So I really instill that, and I talk about that in the book. It's no longer based off of how you look and how you treat certain people. It's about how you treat everyone. You know, it's about how you treat the poor. It's about how you treat people in need. It's about how you treat the disabled and people that aren't like you, that really makes you and your character. And I instilled that even as a teacher. I would talk to all my male students about that. I would tell them that the most important thing is their character. I was like, yes, it's important for you to be able to read. It's important for you to be able to make good grades. And it's important for you to be good at whatever you want to be good at. But it's also very important for you to have good character, because all those things can work out for you. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a great character, then nothing, unfortunately, will probably work out for you. You know, because without good character, people can't trust you. People are not willing to, you know, put their business on the line for you. They're not willing to, you know, draft you if you become an athlete. Like they're not willing to put their, you know, notoriety and their money on the line for somebody that has lack of character. So, you know, character is like one of the biggest things that is like the hugest, is like the big topic of this book and how important that is. And I used to always tell all of my male students, character is most important whenever nobody's watching. Because I'm like, anybody can, you know, be a nice guy when everybody's looking at him and they're like, oh, he held that old lady up because she fell in a crowd full of 100 people. But if it was just you and her, would you walk past her or would you help her? That's the character that's really important, when it's just nobody else but you and that person.
Wow.
You know?
I love this. I love this. Thank you so much.
Of course, of course.
I just wanted to give a chance. We've got a lot of guests here today, and so we've looked at some different things already. You know, we looked at really like the role that creativity plays in anxiousness and depression and in helping us cope. And we're looking at character. and being a gentleman or a lady, I presume, also.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, if you have any questions for Yaddyra or Kelvin, love to hear.
I have a question for Yaddyra, if that's okay.
Yes, and then we'll go to Brenda. Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
Kelvin.
okay, cool. With being in, because you came here at what age? You said from Honduras?
I was 6.
6. Okay, so
Yeah.
being an immigrant that came into this country, like, what's your life experiences been like prior to, obviously now, but like, obviously like, you obviously probably share the same struggles of people of color. Like, how was your life experience growing up in Miami?
I mean, it's been interesting. It's something that I've thought about in the last few days, because I mean, for me, leaving Honduras was very traumatic because we had a very large family there, and it was it was a very large extended family, and like 11 aunts and uncles just on my mom's side, and each of them having anywhere from 2 to 6 kids. And so we were just constantly surrounded by family, and then to come to the United States and have to abruptly transition into a nuclear family was interesting, and also the language. And that's something I've been writing about lately, about the strangeness of being surrounded by another language that you can't understand. I think once I got over that barrier, I loved elementary school. I mean, my elementary school was very equally divided in terms of mostly students from South America and African American students, Afro-Caribbean students, and white students. And I was fine until I got to middle school, and it was in a different part of South Florida. And and then I was darker skinned than a lot of my fellow students, and so that became an issue where that wasn't something that I thought about before. And ever since then, it's been a discovery. Like my grandmother was Black, she was Afro-Honduran, and my dad's biracial. And I started learning things like his connection to segregation in the United States because he had been in the Marine Corps. So it's been a complicated journey of sort of like finding out who I am. But I think most immigrants kind of have that experience of not knowing if you're fully, are you fully American? Are you from the place that you used to be? Racially, I've experienced that as well. And it's a complicated mess that I'm happy to actually have been able to tackle, because I feel like I've been able to kind of at least empathize and understand, maybe not fully. I don't understand what it's like to live in the segregated South. I don't know what that's like. But I do have different versions of that. Like, oh, you speak English so well. I've still gotten that. Or how would you know that? I've had a lot of people question my knowledge of literature. It's been interesting, good and bad, I think. I don't know if that answers.
No, it does. It does. No, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So in the past few years, it's been interesting to kind of see everything that's been happening with immigration, and it's been hard. But I feel like the road to progress is not a straight line. I really fully believe that. So even though there are a lot of difficulties that the country's going through right now, I feel like a lot of change, maybe not perfect change, but a lot of change is going to result.
Yeah.
I'm curious, actually, I can ask you like what the previous couple of weeks have been like for you, and to see sort of the country and the world finally really respond to what's been happening for many years.
Yeah. I've had a lot of like happiness and a lot of like just anger at the same time, because I'm happy at the fact that this time feels a lot different. Like there's a lot of people of non-color that are, you know, speaking out about this issue. And it seems like the whole climate and the whole protesting is really different than years past. You know, it's really like people are really almost starting to get it now, you know, and I don't think it's going to stop until people actually make some changes. But I'm angry because obviously, you know, my dad being in law enforcement for 35 years now, you know, you know, he raised me to be ready for this at any moment, you know, like he would tell me whenever I got my driver's license, he would say, Kelvin, like you need to make sure you go here, you don't go in this neighborhood, you make sure you have your music at this volume, you know, don't ride with your window down over here. And he would like give me all these things, and I didn't understand being like a teenage kid, like being in high school, you know, until the first time I got pulled over. And you know, my first time being pulled over was a good and bad experience. It was good in the sense of the cop obviously didn't use any excessive force. Like he wasn't mean, but it was very eye-awakening for me because it was like, oh, I can get pulled over for doing nothing. Like, because I mean, he had no reason to pull me over. He told me that initially that his reason was that I looked suspicious and there was like a lot of break-ins that happened in this neighborhood. And I was like, well, my parents live in this neighborhood. I live like right down the street. Like I'll be pulling out, going to work. And, you know, and it was at that moment, like I realized, okay, well, people do get profiled for, you know, being a certain skin color. My dad really wasn't lying about this. You know, so, you know, it kind of angers me in that fact that like I've known that this has been going on for like a long time. And, you know, luckily for me, I've never been a victim of police brutality, but I know that I'm a lot more likely to be a victim of it than other people, like my white counterparts. So, you know, it's, I don't know, it's different. Like this time really feels different. Like this time really feels like America's really gonna try to get it right. Like there's a lot of companies that are making a lot of changes, and we just need people at the top of like, you know, the legislature to really understand that these things are not okay, and we have to make some kind of change, you know. And I like how there's certain states now that are adding social workers to police forces to like respond to calls like somebody sleeping in a parking lot, like which doesn't really like need to involve somebody that carries a gun or a taser or somebody to sleep in a parking lot, you know. It just involves like a human to wake them up and be like, why you were sleeping in the parking lot, you know, are you drunk? Well, let me give you a ride home, you know, or something, you know. So yeah, it's like half and half, you know, but
it's
I'm
opening
looking
up
forward to
some
change.
like it's opening up some conversations that
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And this past Sunday I did a Million Man March here, and it was about like 3,500 men in suits. We all like dressed up, and we walked about 2.5 miles in Columbia to the South Carolina State House, and we like protested. We're all wearing hats. We're sweating profusely. We're like drenched in sweat. Our ties are like wet, you know. But it was like a beautiful thing to see so many men of color, so many men of non-color, so many you know, there were so many Muslims. Like there were so many, and there were like there was even a guy who had just gotten into a car accident, and he got into a car accident in February, and like ended up being paralyzed, and he was in a wheelchair. He was a white guy, and he was like marching with us in the wheelchair, and his story was like amazing. Like I talked to him for about 30 minutes, and his story was honestly life-changing because he was like, in the blink of an eye, he was like, I went from walking to not walking, literally. He was like, I went from walking to my car, and then when I got into the car accident, I could no longer walk to my car. And it was like one of those things where I was like, wow, like, and he was so happy, and you know, he was just really excited, you know. So yeah, it's like a really good thing to meet different people of different backgrounds, different races, different nationalities, and see how they're all on board for like the same cause, you know.
Wow. Brenda just posted, which I agree, as you were talking about that, she said, can you please post some photos of the march? It sounds so beautiful. And
Oh, yes. Yes. I
maybe when we
will.
do the replay, could you post them underneath so that other people could see them too?
Sure, yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah. And Brenda, did you have something that you wanted to ask?
I did. I was the lucky gal who got to edit Kelvin's book, Notoriously Dapper. And I was so happy that he shared that story, because the flat tire story was really stood out to me in a good way. And then there was a concept that Kelvin's, I think, family has like a special word. And I wondered if you could explain it. And it's unconditional.
Unconditional, yes. Unconditional. So it's a word that's, so obviously when I was younger, I couldn't say the word unconditionally. I couldn't like pronounce the whole word. So I have an aunt, and she would always say, do you love me unconditionally? So whenever we would visit her, she would prior to us leaving, she would say, I love you. And I'd be like, I love you too. And she would say, but do you love me unconditionally? And I'd be like, unconditionally. So it's like one of those things where even still till this day, every adult in our family doesn't say the word unconditionally. We all say unconditionally still to this day. Like we're all like 30 and up, and we're like unconditionally. Like, that's the term. Like, yeah.
I love it. It feels like it's its own kind of love. Like, I mean, obviously it's unconditionally, but it's even more amped up because like there's just something so sweet about it.
Yeah. Still to this day.
I'm going to ask you, Brenda, as the editor of Kelvin's book, what was it? So what was it that, I don't know if you were, I assume you're the one who found him, or he found you. Yeah,
I did. I had him,
Yeah, thankfully Brenda saw some greatness in me.
Well, for one thing, there was just this ineffable coolness. I was like, whoa, what's he got going on there? And then just the more I looked at his Instagram and his own writings and his personality came through, what I think about Kelvin is that he's obviously a writer and a thinker, and a model, and then he models excellent behavior and character values, and that's what really got my business, if you will, because I thought that he was like, I mean, I know you do this in real life too, Kelvin. You have young African American men that you give them advice, like on how to be a grown-up, how to be a gentleman, how to be a good character. And so I think that's what came across from his beautiful Instagram. I picked up on all that. And then I just like randomly, like, hey, I'm from Mango, like want to do a book together. And I'm still so proud of the book. And, I feel like Kelvin, Kelvin's gone on to do great things, like, some incredible modeling campaigns and gone international and gone global. And I felt like a proud grandma the whole time.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I'm just struck right now by what a gift this is too. I mean, there's so many wonderful gifts of having the authors here, but also to have the editor right here. And this has happened before where it's such a gift to get to hear a little bit of the backstory too, Mm-hmm. And so now that we're talking about this, I'm curious about Yaddyra's book. Like how did your book come to be?
I know that I don't remember if the idea came from a fellow editor, Hugo, and there was some thought that it would be nice to bring in things that have been known to work to help with anxiety. So coloring and drawing and meditations and that kind of thing. But then, Hugo approached me and said it would be really great to have sort of this book framed with the poet's perspective. And so I started helping to frame a lot of the sections with introductions and making sure that there was a lot of a connection going throughout the book. And then I came up with this poem, and suddenly I had written a good portion of the book, and it made sense to me, because like I said, it's the fact that I've had poetry in my life has really, it's been a thing that's been with me since childhood, and I'm lucky to still have it, because it's a thing that I do that kind of helps me to understand the world when it's, you know, when it's a bit chaotic, I think.
Yeah.
And Alina, by the way, who, you know, I have to mention that Alina designed the book and did anything that's pictorial in the book. So all of the coloring pages, there are a lot of doodling pages with nice little doodle frames that give you a prompt to draw particular things. So she also added a lot to the book. So it's just a journal. It's just like a journal, a collaboration. Yeah, like Brenda said, that you can kind of take with you. And I find, it's funny, I find that in my own life that I do a lot of those things in bits and pieces, like drawing and making art and writing and coloring. And it's nice to have it all in one package, I think.
I love that. I was just suddenly struck by something. I don't know, you guys can tell me if this feels true to you, but with both of your books, there's sort of this draw that is something kind of fun and whimsical in a way. Like, you know, that's what draws people in. And then there's all these layers. Like, it feels like with both of your books, there might be an initial impulse of like, oh, what's this? This looks like something kind of interesting. But then it's like you take us and like reel us in. I mean, does that feel so with you guys?
Yeah, it definitely does. You know, and that was the point of the book. I wanted to be so transparent that it got both sides of me. It got like a whimsical side, but then it got also like the serious side of like the serious issues that I'm about, you know? So yeah, I mean, that pretty much narrows it down to a good bit, because I wanted it to be somewhat lighthearted, but somewhat serious at the same time.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Yaddyra, for you too?
Yeah, like I find that if I take something that I spend a lot of my time doing, which is writing poetry, even though I tend to be very nerdy kind of person, and I like to do a lot of research when I'm writing things, I do end up trying to reel people in with humor or with really vivid imagery, so that even if the poem is about you know, someone who ended up colonizing a particular part of Central America, there's also beautiful like plant life in the poem, and so I guess there's one of my favorite poets Ross Gay talks about delights, and I like to delight the reader, because I myself also need to delight in things to kind of balance everything that's always constantly going on in the world.
Yeah. I'd love to hear if anybody else has any thoughts on this topic. Rachel, I thought you might have something to say.
Oh, I know for me, poetry, like, and creativity in these chaotic times has always been, I mean, I was introduced to poetry when I was, I think, a sophomore in high school. I was really, really struggling, and a teacher said, you know, this is the way you can process your feelings, because I didn't know how to have all those feelings at once, and they were so conflicting, and I didn't I couldn't express them to friends. I didn't trust people enough to express them. So I learned to do that in poetry, and ended up taking a independent study my senior year. But it just sent me on such a path of understanding rhythm and flow in writing and in speaking and in being able to communicate with others and listen to others in that way too. I don't know if anybody else has that experience with that. It helped me be a better listener somehow, because in poetry, you kind of have to read between the lines so much. And so when people talk, I'm always so fascinated by all the layers of them when they're talking. And for me right now, hearing all these people talking like on the Facebook Lives and, you know, because there's a lot of people talking, finally saying how they really feel. And so for me, it's such a beautiful thing because that's how I unite with them. That's how I connect to them because I understand feeling. I can, you know, it doesn't matter what category they're in. It doesn't matter their title. It doesn't matter their religion. It doesn't matter their politics. When you can connect through feeling, that's, you know, that's uniting. So that piece has brought me so much hope because I feel like people are listening on a humanity level. And I love that. But I feel like the creativity and the poetry and words and it all kind of helped me get to that point where I could understand and listen better and hear it.
Totally get that, Rachel. That makes a lot of sense to me. I use poetry in my coaching. I love to read poems and have them as prompts for people because I feel like it activates these other, just like you're saying, these other levels. I feel like there's a communication. Like obviously when Yaddyra read that poem, I felt it and we could see like it really, you know, there's something that gets us in a different place. Yeah.
The poetry is really awesome. Like I remember my freshman year of college was when I realized that words and visual art were kind of the same because I've been more of like a visual art person my like entire life. And you know how like somebody can look at a painting and they can interpret different things and this and that. And for me, it was hard to kind of see that with words until I took an English class. My freshman year was like a standard English 101 class. And my professor, he read us a poem and he read the poem and the poem sounded as if though it was like about a father abusing his child. But the poem was actually about a dad teaching his son how to waltz because like they were knocking down furniture, like they were knocking down pots, and I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh my god, like this dad's terrible. And then he like gave us time to analyze it, and then the next time we met, you know, everybody gave their opinions, and like 90% of the class was like, oh yeah, like the dad's abusive, like he was like knocking down pans, and like the son was screaming, and da da da. And he was like, actually, the poem is about a father trying to teach his son how to waltz. And I was like, what? And then he got to like this whole like thing about how words can mean different things. And I was like, it just mind blew. It was like the first time I realized, I was like, oh wow, words can really, you know, have a different emotional, like different whole, because I had a whole different feeling about this character of the poem.
Yeah.
And then after he explained it, I was like, oh, he's a pretty good dad teaching his son how to waltz. Okay, never mind. He's not abusive. You know, so it was like at that moment I realized that visual art and like the way people use words, like the way artists use words, like writers, and the way artists use, you know, canvases and their medium, they're kind of like the same way, you know?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. And you said something really cool there about the perception, and I feel like that I learned from poetry too. It's like to understand that it could look one way and be totally something else, and I think that helps me listen to people too. It's like it can look one way, but it goes deeper. What's the deeper meaning behind what they are? What's under the rage? What's under this? What's under that? And poetry, I think it's like, because of that perception thing, it's like, okay, it can look this way, but really is it? You know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also like about
I love that you said that.
How you read it, because he read it in 3 different ways. He like read it as like somebody being angry, and he was like, and then he knocked off the pants, and then he read it as somebody being sad, and then he read it as like a boy being curious and like happy. And you got 3 different emotions for each one, and but they were all the same words. It really mind screwed me. I was like, I can't. I was like,
great. I know exactly what poem you're talking about. It's if anyone ever looks it up, it's called My Papa's Waltz. And
okay, yes.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
by Theodore
Yeah.
Retzke.
Thank you for the name, because I forgot the name of it. Thank you. Okay, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for telling us.
Yeah.
I think it also, like, along with what Rachel was saying, I think it also teaches us that it's like we can all be looking at, or in this case, reading, right? You're just reading the same thing, but all these different, and of course we can see that, right? Anytime any one of us has ever published anything where there's comments, right? And you're just like, what? You know, how did they get that? Like, they're so angry. That's not what I said, or, you know, but that people can, which helps us understand, right? That it's like, everybody has their own perception. Really? Yeah.
And the words, you know, words, they have their denotative or dictionary definition, but then there are words, a lot of words carry emotional content or content that you bring to it based on your life experience or based on your culture or whatever timeline that you've lived. And so you bring all of that to it. And some of it is shared and some of it is not. Some of it is culturally shared in terms of how people might react to a word, and some of it is not. So that's also like an interesting thing.
Speaking of reacting to a word, I feel like there's a lot of people in the world that react differently to the word moist. Because I've used the word moist to like these kind of food, and people would look at me like, oh my God, like, why would you use that word? I'm like, it is moist. It's like good. It's like moist, you know? But then other people are like, oh yeah, it is moist, you know? Like, I feel like there's like a very good side of like people that are like, why would you use the word moist? That is disgusting. And then there's other people that are like, yeah, it is moist. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's a lot of people that are like either for moist or anti-moist.
Yeah, but I'm particularly laughing because I just had this conversation a couple weeks ago with someone. Someone else just brought it up. Don't you hate the word moist? What is so funny that
I know, right?
I thought where you were going to go, which is also really funny because I was thinking about back to sort of like this particular moment in time and everything that's going on and how, like, you know, I thought we were going to go back to that. And then I love that you were just like, what about that word moist?
Yeah, it's that word, man. Like people are like either, or they're like, oh, okay. You know, it's either or. It's like never
I know
like
where my teenagers are on that. They're like total ew. Hey Sherry, would you mind if I shared something? I've got to go in a few minutes, but I really wanted to share a little story that I'm super proud of.
You betcha.
For our little mango company. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of something called Humble Bundle.
Yeah.
If you're a gamer, then you know it pretty well. And you know, they've been, in addition to game bundles, they've been promoting various ebook bundles over the last several years. And we've been able to deliver some bundles to them, and it's not just sold a lot of ebooks, but it's also, there's always a donation component to it, so that someone buying the bundle can go ahead and oh yeah, thanks Brenda. At least when I get to the punchline. So terrible at telling stories. So we have a Humble Bundle going right now, and we've had several going for, you know, at different times of the year. And right after the murder of George Floyd, we thought we need to pull together and try to create some sort of a fight for racial justice Humble Bundle. And instead of it being kind of that, well, half goes to charity and half goes to the publisher, why don't we just go all in and make it 100% donation, and hopefully have it steered towards the NAACP or, you know, some worthy organization. And we put that out to Humble Bundle, and they said, we're just going into a meeting on this. And that is such a terrific idea. You know, what can you guys give us? And we were like, take everything. But that kicked off yesterday. And so yesterday at 2:00 Eastern. So drum roll here. Let's see how much it's already raised for the NAACP and Race Forward in the last, I guess, 27 hours. So Debbie, have you got that? Or I can share, actually, I've got it too.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, in a little over a day,
What?
1.7 million bucks.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
And you can see some of our books kind of sliding by there. There's Seven Sisters and a Brother. And we have,
Yaddyra was the editor for that one.
yep.
Wow.
So
Oh.
that's just spectacular. I didn't dare to hope it would get that big that fast.
This
Yeah.
is so amazing. How do we promote this if we wanted to jump on board?
Debbie can add the link to chat.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm
And then
definitely
maybe-
gonna share this in my Instagram
I
stories.
can put the link in the replay then too.
Please do.
This is amazing. How long will this be possible that people can participate?
At least 1 week.
It's 1 week, yeah.
Yeah.
Christopher,
Nice.
I'm so glad that you jumped right in with this. It's so.
Oh, wasn't my idea. I just said great.
I mean, but you jumped in here to make sure that we talked about it.
No, I think it's really important because it's part of the dialogue in our team. You know, trying to make a difference, and this was one of the ideas that came out of, was it our, I'm not even sure if it was a marketing meeting, it might have been editorial, but in some meeting we just put that out there, and it's really doing well.
Oh, that's so great.
That's awesome.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and it's such a beautiful way to end this time together, because I'm so proud of being a part of Mango Publishing, and I just feel like look at the authors that we have. I mean, Kelvin and Yaddyra here today, and we've got Rachel, Anita was here, and MJ, and you know, and then all of you who are here as part of the publishing house, but that it's like that you're bringing so much into the world that I feel is just so good and so positive and so necessary. So thank you. Yeah.
I just wanted to add 2 little tidbits related to Humble Bundle, which are that Kelvin's book was in a Humble Bundle last fall.
Oh yeah, it
and
was.
last night, one person bought a Humble Bundle, and you know, it says you can pay any donation, and they paid $20,000. They donated $20,000. Wow. Yeah.
Jeez. Very strong. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brenda, I was just going to ask if, should we do it? Brenda's idea. I call it Brenda's idea.
Yes.
We'll have to coin it better, but for now it's Brenda. So Brenda, a couple, maybe 3 Wednesdays ago, had this idea that it's like we could all go around, and if someone wanted to share something that really stood out for you about this hour. And so whoever starts then sort of passes the mic, as it were, to the next person that they choose. Brenda, will you start us off?
Yeah, I have to leave. Thanks so much.
Bye, Chris.
See you, Chris.
Really appreciate
Bye,
it, Kelvin.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Thanks. Bye.
Sherry, to stick with the full extent of Brenda's idea, you can share whatever's in your heart and like set an intention, whatever. It can go beyond the bounds even of this panel.
I love it. Thank you.
Yes.
Will you start us off?
Sure. Well, I really, one of the most important things to me about Mango and working with all of you, authors, staff, everyone, is that our intention is to publish books that make a difference in the world, books that make it a better world. And we do it. I mean, like, and there's a lot of intentionality in that. And one of my proudest moments, I mean, Chris was sharing a proud moment, which I think we're all proud of, with the huge fundraising for Black Lives Matter and NAACP and all of those causes. But I was had a big presentation to our sales reps and distributor yesterday, and I was telling them something that I was just all proud of, and a couple of the editors are here. Well, actually, 3 of the editors are here that helped make that happen, which was that, you know, in our editorial brainstormings and meetings, we'll say, like, hey, what, you know, are we publishing enough to diversity? Are we publishing enough to, like, you know, people of color? Like, are we publishing enough books that are really going to help people where they are now, blah, blah. And, like, just by looking at it consistently, we had, like, a critical mass of books this February that just passed for Black History Month. And it was incredible. I mean, MJ, I think, had a couple of books, like her Badass Black Girl, Yaddyra's 2 books that she edited, Seven Sisters and a Brother, and the Book of Awesome Black Americans, and several other books, Black Men from the Titanic, etc. And we had those all in the pipeline, and they came out, and then we did a press release about it. And of course, we hoped it would you know, get a good response, and it did. It got, like, almost the biggest response we ever had. But the most meaningful response was that the people that founded Black History Month contacted Mango and invited us to have a booth at their festival in Washington, D.C., and they invited authors, and actually MJ went, and I think Marilyn from Seven Sisters and a Brother went. And I just couldn't get over it. I couldn't get over it. Like, I'm like, the OGs of Black History Month know we exist. And like, you know, it's just like, it's just because, like, I mean, I guess, you know, to just tie it all up, it's like we have that intention and we're mindful about it. And so much so that, like, the world is noticing. And again, it's to publish books that make a difference in the world. So way to go, Yaddyra and MJ and Robin and everybody that helped make Mango Mango, including Kelvin, Notoriously Dapper, and you, Sherry, and just everyone. Like, so I just want to celebrate that moment that Mango's intentionality is important.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pass to Linda.
Hello.
Hi.
I guess I'm the only one who's not currently associated with Mango.
Yeah, you're here.
Yeah, so I wanted to learn more about you. I've heard about Mango from a friend, and the title of the panel really appealed to me because a focus on the heart and living from the heart is something I've been working on for a long time. And Rachel, it was interesting that you mentioned listening, because whenever I talk to people about myself, that's the first thing I say about myself, if I'm thinking clearly, is that I'm a listener. I start everything from listening. My writing, my art, everything starts from that place of listening from the heart. So this was a panel that really appealed to me in title. And Brenda, intention is something that I've been working with for a long time too, about living more intentionally. A friend and I used to start, and we're trying to get back on the track with it, but we used to have an intentional creation party every year at the new year. Instead of setting resolutions, we work on intentions. So all of what you all have been saying has been really meaningful for me. So thank you for the opportunity to listen and to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Do you want to pass the mic to someone?
Unmute myself again. Well, how about Rachel?
Thank you. My intention for me and for the awakening of more and more humans to fully listen and hear the humanity in each other and connect through our humanity can, you know, to focus on what unites us instead of what divides us, our feelings, our hopes, our dreams, our insides, what makes us human. And so my intention is to listen and listen through, and to really try to feel the humanity in people, and from all different angles, so that I get the best understanding of their humanness. And I hope our world awakens more and more to it, which I feel like it is. So it's just that it keeps going and stays on that track. I will pass to MJ.
Thank you so much. I'm feeling so grateful right now for Mango and for everyone who always takes the time to come to those meetings and share some inspiration. And so many changes have been happening recently around the world and in the US. And I hope that we don't lose that momentum, that real change is in fact taking place. And in the meantime, I'm going to continue appreciating the blessings that I receive every day. And I wanted to thank you guys for organizing this great event. I'm going to pass the baton to Robin.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to do show and tell, if that's allowed. I'm not even going to try to be profound. So I've been working on this cross-stitch project pretty much the entire time I've been in quarantine, and I'm almost done, and then I have to add the words to it, but I just am really proud of it, so I wanted to show you.
Oh, wow. Robin.
It's beautiful.
I have like literally one line left. You can see right at the bottom. I just have to do right there. Then it's done, and then the idea is to add a quote, which is, and I'm gonna say it a little bit wrong, but it's these mountains you've been carrying, you were only meant to climb. And that's something I read, I don't know, like 3 months ago, and I have not yet gotten that quote out of my head as just something that I think should be at least in my head a lot of the time. And so I just, ever since Kelvin held up his shoes, I was like, I wanna hold up my class. That's me. I will defer to Debbie.
Hi, I just want to say thank you so much for this wonderful panel. So much has resonated with so much, and it was just really meaningful, and thank you. And let's see, there's so many subjects we touched upon which were inspiring, and I too am grateful for Mango. And circling back to creativity and a love of writing and words, I have that, and I've always been a lifelong painter as well. And I just like to share that I officially have my own studio space now. So I'm very excited, and so my intention is to bring more creativity into my life on a, thank you. Is to bring more creativity to my life on a daily or 3 times a week basis. So and when I did notice that when I started attending the Heart Wisdom calls, I felt stuck in my creative life outside of work, and now I don't feel that way. So thank you, Heart Wisdom panels. And I will pass to Sherry.
Oh goodness. I feel just such gratitude, and I just think, I don't have the power to do this, but if I did, like, my intention is that this is how the world would be, right? That it's like such intelligent, thoughtful, beautiful, creative people just gathering each week to share, and that we get to learn from each other, right? And I feel as if everyone shows up, and the word listening has come up so many times today, but it's like we show up and we just we hear each other, we're really listening, and we get to hear people's different experiences. And to really, I feel, I mean, every week I just fall in love with everybody here. And it's like, that's what I want the world to feel like. And again, we've said this 1,000 times, but it's like, I feel like that's what Mango is promoting. Different voices and just this sense of just loving, learning about each other. So thank you. And I'm gonna call on Kelvin.
All right. I am also very thankful for Mango, and especially thankful for Brenda for being able to see all of the awesome things she saw in me. And you know, if it wasn't for her, you know, I would have never went to the NAACP Image Awards because my book was nominated. And I like actually got to go to like an award show, which is like my first award show that I've ever been to, which was awesome. So thank you, Brenda, for that, because if it wasn't for you, you know, I would have never got a chance to go, you know. And you know, I also want to thank Brenda again for helping me really find my voice as a writer, because being like a visual artist, I obviously never knew how important words were and how you could use them and find like your writer's voice. So when I was chatting with Brenda about how to write a book, like what, like, I mean, like, do I write it how I speak? She said, like, if you're going to tell a story, you need to tell it just how you would speak it, you know, but just type it out, you know? So that really helped me get over that anxiety of trying to kind of write like this perfect book in a way, you know, because I was so hung up on trying to write like this perfect entity of what I wanted a gentleman to be. And she just kept reminding me that it needs to be real to how I feel and how I actually speak, you know? And a lot of people that know me, when they read the book, they're like, I can like hear your voice, because these are like words that you say like in real life. Like you say unconditional, you say strong, you say these words in real life. So yeah, you know, and it's really awesome to be a part of this panel, and obviously to get to hear different aspects from different authors, you know, and their different life experiences and how, you know, their different topics of choice for their book was important to their own life and their own life experiences. So yeah, thank you guys for having me. You know, I truly learned a lot today from Yaddyra, right? It's Yaddyra or Yaddyra?
Yaddyra.
Okay, that's okay, cool. Yeah. And I'll pass the baton to you now.
So thank you, Rachel, for originating that idea about having to be a good listener, or developing that as a poet, because I feel like that's definitely something that I've been working on as a human being for the last couple of weeks, especially. I think that I'm a decent listener because you know, I've been a poet for so long, but I feel like I could definitely be better at listening, not just at listening to the people in my life, but listening as a writer. In my own writing projects, I always think of Toni Morrison. I know I'm messing up the quote, but it's something like, write the book that you want to see in the world. Mm-hmm. And as I bring in new authors into Mango, I want to think about listening to the voices out there that really want stories that haven't been told, that they haven't had the opportunity to tell their stories, or to connect with a writer in some way, that they can walk into a bookstore or go online and find the book for them, because finally there are certain stories that can be told and published. Mm-hmm. So I hope that as an editor that I can be a good listener.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I think everyone's had a chance. Yes, I think so. That was beautiful. Thank you all so much. And we're here every Wednesday at 1:30. Please come back. It's wonderful to have this community and to get to listen to all of you.
Of course.
Have a great week, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Unconditioned. Bye.
Oh, that's awesome.